Welcome to Conversations with Cal, where real stories spark real impact. I'm Cornell Calhoun III, and right here in the heart of Cleveland, we sit down with leaders, creatives, and visionaries who are shaping our communities and inspiring change. From personal journeys to powerful ideas, these conversations celebrate resilience, purpose, and the voices that move our city forward. This is dialogue that uplifts, connects, and challenges us to grow. Welcome to Conversations with Cal. Greetings, Cleveland, and welcome to Conversations with Cal, the show that initiates engaging conversation. I'm your host, Cornell Calhoun III, and I am thrilled to have as my guest a leader who is a dynamic force for change, creating pathways and opportunities and transforming lives across our region. The CEO of Greater Cleveland Works, Miss Michelle Rose. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's start a conversation. You know, I was so impressed. So you've worked at the highest level in federal government. What brought you back to Cleveland? How did that happen?
Yeah, so back to Cleveland. I grew up in this area in Lake County. We were just chatting. I went to Painesville Riverside High School, and then I went to Miami of Ohio for college. And I had been working in the federal government for many years. I was an appointee of President Obama at the Labor Department for all 8 years of his term, turned off the lights on the last day. And when President Trump was elected the first time, I thought it might be a good time to take a break from national politics. And at the time I had twins that were about 6 months old. And my husband and I decided to move back home to Cleveland to be closer to my parents, again, to get a break from Washington and to see what was happening here. During that time, I met a young peer who worked at KeyBank, whose name was Justin Bibb, and we became friends. And we talked a lot about what we saw in Cleveland and what we hoped for Cleveland. And then many years later, when he won, I had been telling him for a while that Ohio Means Jobs and the Workforce Development Board really needed a strong leader. And it really was an organization that could do so much more for residents. And so he asked me to lead it. At the time, I had actually moved back to work for President Biden in the first year and a half of his administration. And then the mayor was elected and I came back to Shaker Heights, where I live, a second time. So moved our kids around a lot, but really it was the opportunity to do actual hands-on work. In Washington, you're too far from the decisions you make, and you don't really get to see the impact, good or bad, of what you're up to. So this is an opportunity to continue public service, but that is also more tangible.
So when Mayor Bibb asked you to lead Greater Cleveland Works in 2022, what did you discover that other people probably missed?
Yeah, again, at the time, I knew it was an organization with so much potential that had been sort of underinvested in. There hadn't been a permanent leader for a couple of years at the time. And it wasn't really playing its role as a leader of the workforce ecosystem. It wasn't called Greater Cleveland Works at the time. It was still called the Ohio Means Jobs Office. One of the things we did when I arrived was my board had led a process and an assessment that perhaps we should operate as a nonprofit entity. So we kind of spun off from the city and the county and became a nonprofit that we then called Greater Cleveland Works. And that allows us to be more responsive to what we're seeing in the community and the labor market, allows us to raise money so that we can make better use of our original federal, state, county, and city funding, and basically serve more people better. So we pursued all of those things because there's just an opportunity to do so much more. And so now we're at the point that we are doing so much more, and it's so exciting. But I think that, it is really satisfying to get to realize some of those things that I wanted us to be better at, which is the delivery of services to our residents, assistance for employers who need a little more help finding the talent that they want, and just in general improving economic mobility in the city and the county.
Okay, and so Greater Cleveland Works was formed in 2024, correct?
Yeah.
What were some of the barriers, the challenges in moving to a nonprofit?
Oh, yeah, many, mostly logistical. Lots of little moving parts. But I think once we really sat down with city council and the mayor, stakeholders, our board, our staff, partners, and really explained why we wanted to do this, it made sense to a lot of people. The ability to just be more responsive, to be a leader, to better serve people, to support fundraising. So I think it all kind of came together. And in the end, it was a lot of steps and it was hard, but it was well worth it.
What does it mean, good jobs in Cleveland in 2026? What's a good job?
Yeah, this is my favorite topic. And we are actually in the process of defining what a good job is and helping employers self-assess the quality of their jobs. So a good job, first and foremost, always means one thing to everyone, which is a living wage.
Right.
Right?
Right. Yeah.
Are you being paid enough that this work feels like it can sustain your family? I want people to be thriving, though, so I think there are other things that we look at, too. A big one is the investment that employers make in their workforce. Are they onboarding? Are they training? Are they providing upward mobility within a job and that next step on the career ladder within the company? There are questions around benefits and processes. And then we also help an employer look at their culture. Kind of what kind of culture do they have? How valued does a worker feel? And what kind of agency do they have in making their workplace even better? So all of those elements together make a good job. There are lots of ways to be a good job or to offer a good job, but I think it looks like a composite of those things. So we're thrilled that when we talk about, in this city, businesses expanding or businesses coming here to operate, that when we say, oh, this is 50 new good jobs, there's an actual definition behind that. And so I want residents and workers to feel more confident that when we promote a company to them as a place to work, that is a good job.
What would you say Cleveland employers are getting wrong in terms of hiring and retaining local workers?
Yeah. You make a good point about both hiring and retaining, because both are really important. Talent acquisition or hiring is the first step. And all employers and workers want retention as well, because that is how you lower costs for employers. It's how you build culture, and it's how employees have actual economic growth. I don't know that employers in Cleveland are getting it wrong. I think by and large, employers in Cleveland and any market want to do the right thing and don't have the capacity or don't know how to make positive change. So I think that one of the things we're doing in this job quality definition process is providing resources for why an employer might want to change and how. So my assumption is that most employers, especially small and medium-sized employers, want to do the right thing. They may not even have a full-time HR person on staff. So there's no one thinking proactively about retention or programming that might benefit their workforce. And so we want to step in and help provide that.
Workforce development, that's kind of like a word you hear all the time. And people sometimes don't even understand what it means.
Yeah.
What is a great definition for workforce development?
Yeah, everybody does workforce, right? And it is a buzzword. Workforce development to me means employment and training services. So how can we ensure someone has access to the education, training, and credentials they need to succeed in employment? How are we placing them into employment? And how are we retaining them in those jobs? Which again is so important because it indicates long-term sustained economic mobility. In the workforce system, we measure everything by placement. Did a person get a job? But there's so much more that happens before that is important and measurable, and there's so much that happens after that that's also important and measurable.
And what are some of the barriers that prevent people from, assessing opportunities, work opportunities?
Yeah. There are many. We often refer to them in my world as the social determinants of work. The ones we see most frequently at my office are transportation, the ability to get to training or work on time in a way that doesn't cost 2 hours on either end of the commute, and the affordability of cars. And the second thing we see a lot of, but we also don't see a lot of it and we know it's out there, is barriers around childcare. Not having affordable childcare that makes it worthwhile for someone to work at all. So that is something I've been working a lot with partners in our community, like Starting Point, like Pre-for-Cle, to make sure that parents who want to work have access to affordable childcare so that their child is thriving while they're pursuing wages and employment.
Why do you enjoy your position?
I love this job. One, I think this is an extension of public service. I've spent my whole career, federal government, local government, now as a nonprofit leader in public service. I think we're helping people really address those barriers that we're seeing, finding quality employment and understanding what their purpose is. And that is meaningful. That is time well spent to me. I want work to be better for everyone. And it's such a privilege for me to do work every day that I also love.
And how would you define success in a position like this and overall for the organization?
Yeah. So for us, our main focus is delivering on our core mission, which is connecting job seekers to open positions. Everything else around it is to that same end. I also care a lot about efficiency, so I want to make sure we're good stewards of our funding. We receive federal funding, and then we also receive private philanthropic funding. And I want to make sure we're making the most of that funding. So success to me looks like achieving the core mission of those placements, of connecting someone to a job.
Do you believe there's a disconnect between policy and people in terms of workforce development?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a disconnect between policy and people. That's the work. That's why we're all here. That's why I'm in public service. There are policies that exist now in this country, in the state, that make it difficult to do my job. I'm very worried about the impacts we'll see due to SNAP and Medicaid eligibility changes this year. It means more people have less. At the same time, affordability is more difficult for many of our residents. So the kinds of things that keep me up at night are those policy impacts on real people, and that some lawmakers don't always see that. Nonetheless, I think there are things I am not, content to just be frustrated. I think there are things we can do to truly try to help people. But I think that one of my jobs being a local practitioner is to carry that message forward and say, here's what I see at our job center. Here's what I see residents struggling with. Here's what I see employers struggling with, and using that to inform policy choices.
And what's your vision for Greater Cleveland Works? I know you got one.
Yeah, I've got, I'll spend a minute on this because it's, what I do. So our main vision is operational excellence, delivering on those services for residents and employers in this community. That's why we're here. And then we're pursuing 3 things I'll talk about that I think make that work stronger and better, that I'm really proud of. The first is a platform called Arena. It is a predictive matching software that allows job seekers who come into our center and are working with a job coach to fill out a short survey about themselves and better understand and be exposed to new kinds of positions they might not have considered before. So you take the little thing and it says, oh, you've matched with this job at university hospitals. Would you consider applying? University Hospitals gets that application and sees this person was a likely match for your position. And so it's a little bit more tailored approach to hiring and to matchmaking, which really is at the core of our work. The second thing I'm really excited about is the definition of job quality that I mentioned earlier, and the Employment Quality Index, and assisting employers in understanding and making practice change to be better employers and offer better jobs so that our residents over time have better jobs, better access to opportunity. And the third thing is barrier removal. So the spending of money in a more generous and holistic way to meet those transportation barriers, to meet those childcare barriers, and to ensure that people have the cost of living expenses that they need to succeed in training employment. We spend so much money on someone's training. We need to spend a little bit more money to ensure they can also pay their rent so that they can finish their training and become a nurse, or that they're not burdened by the costs of equipment, training, transportation, boots, driver's licenses, all the things you kind of need to be a human. We're trying to equalize the choice between entering into a career pathway and taking the job that's in front of you. And so I really feel like we're onto something with this barrier removal. We've seen a lot of progress to date through the Built Environment Collaborative on what it means to actually meet people's cost of living needs, and then how that pays off for them when they're in training and ultimately in a job.
So Ohio Means Jobs. You oversee, Greater Cleveland Works oversees that. How did Ohio Means work prior to you guys taking over?
Yeah, well, it still works a lot, many of the ways it did before, and it's still the same entity. How I would think of it is that Greater Cleveland Works is the umbrella over a lot of programming. Some of it privately funded, some of it funded by the city, but Ohio Means Jobs still is our largest offering, right? It is the job center. It's where I physically sit and our Greater Cleveland Works offices are.
Okay.
And it's where most of our work occurs. And it's the starting point for why we pursue anything else. But as we have other programming and other funding, it all goes back to support that core work at the job center, at the Ohio Means Jobs Center. So we're still Ohio Means Jobs. We're still the Workforce Development Board, but there's a brand layer over it of Greater Cleveland Works.
I remember an incident. I remember going to Ohio Means Jobs, and I was sitting there, and the presenter was in front of us, and he had all these people who weren't working, unemployed, and I just felt like, man, I would love to be up there to encourage and, inspire these people, because, that's such a valid and important, part of someone's development and trying to find a job,
Oh, for sure. So to be clear, I don't actually do that work either. We are reliant on a team of job coaches who do an incredible job at that kind of highly skilled work, right? Helping someone feel confident, ready, and ultimately successful in their job search, which can be a really emotionally trying process. I've been unemployed and looking for jobs, and it's hard. And so, and oftentimes people have stuff going on in their lives that they also need help with. And so, what is our role in kind of navigating those various offers of help? If you'd like to come back and teach a class on feeling confident and prepared, we'd love to have you.
Hey, I'm serious. I sat there and I looked at all these people, and you could tell they were like defeated. And I was like, man, the person up there should be really inspiring these people to go out and give them confidence. So we'll have to talk about that after the show.
Well, part of that is also giving them opportunities that feel good, that feel right for them, that feel quality with a good wage, and that feel exciting, right? Like I said, we all spend a lot of time at work. It should feel a bit better than I think it does for most people. And so part of that is about them fit as well, and understanding what someone might be good at, and then helping them get to the point where they're properly trained and credentialed and able to articulate why they're going to be good at it. So that's really kind of the heart of what we do, is that readiness part.
What would you tell a young man or woman who felt that they didn't have any opportunities or they didn't have anything to offer an employee?
Well, everyone wants access to our community's young people. We talk all the time about how more employers can offer experiences and what we call career exposure to our community's young people, whether that be in school or at our job center or somewhere else like Youth Opportunities Unlimited. What I would really want that person to know is there are so many more people rooting for them than they could possibly imagine. And that there are people like me, like you, who know very well that those opportunities exist. And it's our job to make sure they understand and know that they haven't done anything wrong, but that there are more opportunities than they realize.
What do you hope your three daughters will learn from watching you in your position?
Yeah, wow, that's a great question. I have 3 daughters. They're in fourth and first grade. And I hope they see me working hard. I sometimes have some mom guilt. You know, I'm on my phone at night. I'm a little distracted sometimes. I hope they see it's in service of other people. I've been taking them to political rallies and events and making sure they speak their mind since they were infants. So I hope they've learned those things and that they also feel empowered to pursue a career path that inspires them.
How do you get individuals to come to Ohio Means Job? I mean, how do you market if someone was looking for a job or contemplating changing jobs or whatever? How does that work, Michelle?
Yes. Well, oftentimes we are reliant on word of mouth.
Okay.
We are at 1910 Carnegie, so if you're watching this across from the Wolstein Center, we hope you'll come visit us. You can learn more about us at our website, greaterclevelandworks.org, and set up an appointment to come in. We're really trying to make that experience a little bit smoother for people, trying to make sure they don't have to come too many times, right? It's a little bit of a pain sometimes. We are moving offices later this year, so we'll be amplifying that out in the world so that people know where to find us. But we have, in the same way everybody else finds out about anything, billboards, ads, bus ads, radio. But the more the merrier. We hope to serve more people this year and really feel like we can be a resource for more people.
About how many people would you say you serve a year?
Last year, 13,000 people came to see us.
Wow.
Which is a lot. Not all of them received intensive services. Some of them used our computer lab or were referred to a partner. We serve a couple thousand with those more intensive set of career assessment, job search, and resume services and training. But, you know, we have a lot of assistance and a lot of expertise in the building on how to make sure they find what they're looking for.
Is the training still like a week or less?
It really depends.
It depends on what they're looking for.
Sometimes we'll work with a partner like Tri-C or Newbridge. If somebody wants to become a nurse, for example, or something in healthcare, we'll kind of work with someone, right? So there's lots of ways you could go. We work to fill manufacturing jobs in this community. That's a very in-demand sector. We work with Magnet and Towards Employment to do that because they have the relationships with employers who are ready to hire and they have a training curriculum that works. So it really depends on what you're going to do, but could be as little as a week or so, could be as many, some registered apprenticeships are 5 years, but it's really a path. And it just depends on what you're interested in.
Yeah, you mentioned something. So who are some of the collaborators that you work with?
Well, I've mentioned some here today. Youth Opportunities Unlimited provides our youth services. Tri-C is a very important partner of ours. Newbridge, which does healthcare training services. Towards Employment, which is a great partner of ours and a long-standing partner. Magnet, critical in the manufacturing space. Ohio Guidestone.
I got a bunch of
the Centers for Family and Children. Well, back to our earlier point, everybody does workforce, right?
Right.
And what we can offer is a consistent experience with our partners. And oftentimes we have funding to help people go to school or get a credential.
What do you want your legacy to be when this is all over for you?
I would like my legacy to be that it was a little bit easier to access services than it used to be. And by services, I mean getting into training, expressing your interests and getting into a program that you want to do, but also some of that barrier removal and supportive services work that we talked about. I don't want it to be so hard for people to get transported to work or to find the childcare that they're excited about for their kid. And so for me, it is a resident feeling like they got a really high level of service and it wasn't too hard to navigate.
In close, give me a feel-good story, something that happened with a client or an employer that really resonated with you.
Yeah, sure. I'll talk a little bit about someone we actually featured in our last impact report. Her name is Erica Wade, and she is an operating engineer. And one thing that was holding her back was a child care bill that she owed from about a year ago, $289. And typically that is not the kind of funding that we could offer someone. So $289 may not seem like a lot to some people, but it was the barrier for her having her child in a high quality child care setting or getting re-enrolled there and going to work every day as a trained operating engineer. And we were able to pay off that back fine because of a flexible pot of funding Mayor Bibb invested in the Built Environment Collaborative 2 or 3 years ago at this point. Now Erica is thriving as an operating engineer, which, if you don't know, are the people who operate the big cranes on work sites. It's kind of the coolest job at a construction site. And so, Erica's willingness to state her need to try to access help so that she could, in the tenacity she showed to succeed in her field, is inspiring to me. And we're always so grateful that she shares her story with the broader public.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Michelle, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was fun and it went by so fast.
Maybe I'll keep you here another hour. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. CEO Michelle Rose is building more than just programs. She's building pathways, purpose, and possibilities for individuals in the Cleveland and Northeast Ohio area. I'm Cornell Calhoun III for TV20 We Are Cleveland and Conversations with Cal. And remember, if you don't like what's being said, change the conversation.